You know those moments when you're doing what you love in your business? Maybe it's standing on stage or creating content. Whatever it is, you're totally immersed and time just seems to slip by. This is called the flow state.
At Speaker Flow, we're obsessed with how to get you there more often. Each week, we're joined by a new expert where we share stories, strategies, and systems to help craft a business you love. Welcome to Technically Speaking. Boom. All right, we are live. Grant, man, thank you so much for joining us today. It's so good to have you. Again, number two.
Again.
I can't believe you're even willing to come back for a second time.
Come on now. I need a trophy or something here.
Yeah.
Boys, we were talking before we hit record here. I admire, appreciate, respect you guys. And so anytime I can hang out with you is going to be a good day. So looking forward to chatting.
No, man. Us too. Thank you. You could make me cry.
keep it together. Stay strong for the people.
Thank you. I will. I'm going to do my best. So look, man, we appreciate not only the business that you run, which just helps so many people and is such a great, sort of just partner for us to have, since you do so many of the things that we don't, and vice versa, I think, to some degree. But we also just like you as a person, and as an entrepreneur, like even outside of the business itself, like we think you kind of do a good job at just being a business owner. We look up to you, I think, in that degree. For me personally, and I think for Taylor too, one of the things that we both like admire about you is that you're not like one of those hustle people that's just like work or die. Like it seems like you have a good balance in terms of your priorities between like your work life and just the other things that you do in your world. And I think any entrepreneur can take a lesson from that to some degree. So like, what are your thoughts about that? Like, how do you look at the balance in your life between the different things that you do and care about? And why have you decided to take that angle as it relates to entrepreneurship specifically?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I love talking about this topic because I completely resonate with. I love podcasting. I love speaking. I love entrepreneurship. I love business. I know you guys love all those same things, but my most important roles are being a good husband and being a good father. And like, that's it, full stop. And so I tell our team all the time that who you are is more important than what you do. Who you are is more important than what you do. Meaning, if we're all great entrepreneurs, if we're great speakers, if we're great podcasters, but we drop the ball as husbands, as wives, as moms, as dads, if we're a shell of a human being, we are doing it wrong. And so like, I love all these things. Nothing wrong to love all these things and be driven and motivated and all that. But I know that my most important responsibilities are to my wife, to my girls. I'm like, my wife, she made a decision. She's stuck with me. Like, she's got to live with that. But like, my girls didn't get a vote. They just came out and they're like, "Your dad? Okay, cool. We'll roll with that." And like, I want to be the best possible father to them, the best possible husband to my wife. My wife and I, we just celebrated our 21st wedding anniversary. Been together for 26 years.
Wow.
And so like, yeah, it's just like, there's nothing wrong with being motivated, driven, and I'm all those things. But you can't do it at the detriment of the people that you love the most. And I think there's a big misconception that in order to be successful as a speaker or a business owner or as an entrepreneur or whatever, like you got to burn the candle at both ends. You got to be going constantly, and you just got to be slave to it. Like I don't buy that at all. Like I think you can have your cake and eat it too. And so we, like you guys, we're a completely virtual company, largely because selfishly from the beginning, like I don't want to go to an office. Like when we're done here, I want to go hang out with my wife and my girls, and I want to be around them. And so you can build and structure your life in a way that makes sense and resonates with you and what you want to do. But you just have to be really, really intentional about that versus just like, man, this is the hand that I've been dealt. So I have to do this to get ahead, or to like, no, you don't. Like you get to design the rules to the game that makes sense for you and what it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Important.
Was that always like was that always your nature, or was that something you like learned the hard way and then made a decision to act on? Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, good question. I would say, well, if we go back in time for a second, in high school, I was really involved in my local church, and my youth pastor had a big impact in my life. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, that seems like a cool gig. And so I went to Bible college, worked at a different church for a little while as a youth pastor, gave me a lot of opportunities to speak. And that kind of like lit the fire for me. Like, man, speaking's a lot of fun. Like, can you make a living at this? Like, this is really cool. But the church where I worked, it wasn't like the most healthy environment. It was like you were on all the time, you were going all the time. It wasn't like you clocked in and clocked out. The work culture was a bit toxic, and so there were several things that kind of left a taste in my mouth. I was just like, well, dang, that sucked. Like, that it should be better than that. And so, yeah, in many ways now, like I want to treat people, whether they work with us as customers or as clients or team members, you just want to treat people right and take good care of people. And I tell the team, like, I want this to be the best place that you ever work. And I want to make it really, really hard for you to leave. Not in a manipulative way, but just like the
Right.
reality is like, the anybody that you work with, or works for you, like they could do any number of things. They could go start their own business, or they could be a speaker, or they could, work for someone else, or whatever. But like, I never want someone to feel like, um, uh, man, I hate it here. I'm thinking about my next thing. Like I had a guy tell me the other day, he's been with us for about a year, and he said, "Man, this is the first job that I've had where I'm not thinking about my next job." And like,
Wow.
how often is that the case for people of just like, man, I got one foot here, one foot out there, and I hate it here. And like, no, like hiring great people is really hard to do. So just create the type of environment where people are like, no, no, the grass isn't greener over there. Like the grass is awesome here. And so in order to do that, you got to take care of people and just like legit like give a crap about people and who they are outside of what their role is that they do within your company or whatever the work is that you may do.
Yeah, for
Yep.
sure. Well, it's also impossible to do that if your cup is empty yourself, so
Totally.
in making sure that you're not a shell of a human being yourself as the business owner makes
Yep.
all abundance like a lot more possible, it seems.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Heck yeah. So, to segue into the kind of meat and potatoes, if you will, of this conversation, really the concept here is it, it seems that business gets a little easier, let's say, client acquisition, generating more revenue when your calendar is already full of gigs, right? You've got referrals coming in, maybe some spin, you've got past clients to potentially get repeat business from. But there's that awkward kind of phase when you're first building things, arguably between, the first year and potentially up to 5, where it can feel a little sticky. You're getting clear on the message and the positioning of the market, and you're kind of trying to still work to getting your calendar full as a speaker. And so we're going to dive in on that subject here in a moment. But it seems like your sweet spot at the Speaker Lab is truly like that conundrum, like helping up and coming speakers starting to get their calendars full. And so is that true? And if so, like why did that become the niche for you guys?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, like the Speaker Lab has been like what I wish I had when I got started. So I mentioned I was a youth pastor, and so I was doing some speaking. And then this was, 17, 18 years ago or so. I'm like, hey, I want to be a speaker. But at the time, like there were no podcasts, there weren't what either of us are doing, and there weren't, books or resources. And so I found myself just emailing speakers, harassing speakers, stalking them. Can I pick your brain, and like that kind of stuff. And you learn a couple things and start to book some gigs and figure out some stuff and stumble along and book some more gigs. And eventually got to a point where I was doing about 60, 70 gigs. But then I had a lot of people were asking me like, hey, I want to be a speaker. How do I do that? And so a lot of what we started doing was came out of like what I wish I had when I got started, of just like, I felt like I had the potential, but I needed the plan. I had the potential, but I needed the plan. Meaning, like, I knew I wasn't the best speaker in the world. I wasn't the worst speaker. There was something there. I wanted to do more of it. I just didn't know, how does this work? How do how do you find gigs, and what do you speak about, and who hires speakers, and how much you charge, and how does this mysterious industry work? And I think I mean, as you guys well know, there's so many people that are in that same spot of going like, I think I can do this if someone will just freaking tell me what to do. And so I think that's definitely like a lot of the speakers that we work with, or people who are trying to figure out how to get started. They've done some speaking before, they've been paid a time or two, some stuff's fallen in their lap as a word of mouth, a referral, or they did a favor for a friend. But like, yeah, that's great. But like, how do you actually build a speaking business? And that's one thing to do some one-off stuff here and there. But if you wanted to do 20, 30, 40, 50 gigs a year, what does that look like? Because that's just different. It requires systems and processes and a lot of the stuff that, you guys teach as well. And so yeah, that really, if anything, like one thing we're doing right now is starting to help some speakers that are a little bit upstream of going like, okay, I'm making six figures and I'm doing 30, 40, 50 gigs a year, but like there's a lot of moving pieces that you got to start thinking about. And like I'm thinking about hiring my first person. I don't know, who do I hire? What do I hire them to do? How much do I pay? How does that work? And I've got money coming in, but I'm trying to understand, cash flow and taxes. And, I've kind of like duct taped this business together, but I need some better, systems and processes and, tools in place. And so we're helping some speakers with that. But, yeah, I think, for the most part, speaking, as you guys well know, is like it's very much a momentum business. And initially when you're getting started, like you're just taking this boulder and you're just trying to like brute force, just push it to get something. And I book a gig, and like you said, I might get some referral or spinoff or repeat business, but like, man, it just like it takes a minute to get going. And the more energy, more effort, then I book another gig and I book another gig, and then that leads to a referral. And then 2 years later, I got some repeat, or I got some spinoff for that. And it just kind of creates this flywheel. But you're right that like initially it's a lot of work to get that flywheel going.
Yeah. I find that there's a lot of people that are willing to deal with that phase too, if they believe that the things that they're doing genuinely
Right.
will lead to the results at the end. Like I
Yeah.
think some people genuinely are afraid of hard work, and that's fine. Everybody's got a different flavor that they're interested in. Probably
Yeah.
entrepreneurialism isn't the path for that person, but I think most people
Yeah.
are willing to do some hard work. But man, like I even sense this within myself, like the idea that I'm going to do a bunch of the wrong work, like it's just the
Yeah.
wasted time and energy and stress, and like that can be a lot. So I can understand why somebody, like just like you just described yourself being in that state, just like having a plan, like having a repeatable series of things that I know if I do is going to work because it's worked for all the other people. Like that is an attractive thing. There's probably a lot of people listening to this show relating to that. And if you are that person listening to the show, this is not a paid advertisement. We get no affiliate commissions from Grant. There's nothing here other than love. Go talk to Grant and his team, because he's the person helping
Well,
you do that.
and here's the thing we
Uh,
tell speakers all the time, and you guys know this to be true, is like what we teach is not rocket science, but it's simple, but it's not easy. And so it's kind of like if
Yeah.
you wanted to lose 10 pounds, what do you got to do? Well, I don't know. I'm not any health expert, but I know you need to pay attention to what you eat and you need to exercise. Like that's it. It's simple, but it's not easy. Otherwise, we'd be, sexy like you guys, but like not everybody's that sexy. And so it still requires work. And so like the process for getting booked and paid to speak and finding booking gigs and like building a business, like I mean, it's not overly difficult, but like you still got to work. And so the big thing that we see is there are speakers that are just kind of like, I'm kind of interested in speaking. That seems kind of cool. I've done it a time or two. I wouldn't mind doing some more. And it's just kind of like this thing of I'm going to dip my toe into it, and I'm going to
Right.
we always like to say like you can't put amateur effort and expect professional results. It just doesn't work like
oh,
that. So
I
if you
love
want to be
that.
great at whatever the thing is, or have whatever that, like you got to be intentional on it and put the work in. And so if you need to whether you want to do 10 gigs a year or 50 gigs a year, it's kind of like if you need to lose 10 pounds or 50 pounds, like it's going to take more work, but like it's hard work either way. And so even if you just want to do a couple of gigs, you still got to be able to like, no, like this is a big thing. And like, this is what I'm working towards versus just kind of like, I don't know, like, I'll put a little speaking tab on my website and mention it on Facebook. And then hopefully I'll get gigs, but maybe, I don't know. We'll see. And it's just like, you're just dabbling. So if you're going to do it. But just don't have the false expectations of like, not really doing anything, but somehow I'm hoping that speaking gigs are going to magically fall in my lap. And, because they heard about that from someone. And it just, as you guys know, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, totally. So, what do
Could
you
not agree
think is
more.
like one of the like primary challenges of like a new developing speaking business, like that they'll have to overcome? Like, you look back on all of your clients, like what's that like initial hurdle for them as they're now they have the mindset, right, that they're running this as a business,
Yeah.
they're going to commit. What's the challenge that they're going to experience in that? that initial setup time.
Yeah, I think a couple things. Like one of the biggest ones is just getting clear on who they speak to and what problem that they solve.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, like we want to, speakers just we love speaking. So what do we speak about? I don't know, man. What do you want me to
Everything,
speak about?
whatever you
And
want. Tacos?
yeah, and who do I speak to? People, humans. My message is for everybody. Like that just doesn't work. And so, but we just want to speak, so we just cast the net as far and wide as
Yeah,
possible. And there's so many different. Well, I could speak to this audience, and I could talk about marketing, and I could talk about podcasting, and I could talk about my story. I could talk about health, and I could talk about, this. And it's just like it just doesn't work like that. So narrowing it down, which means you got to make hard choices. As I'm going to speak on this, which means I'm also not going to speak on that. And that's just tough, because you're kind of looking for this overlap between what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what you're knowledgeable on, what your experience, what are your connections, and how does that overlap with, yeah, but like, what do people actually hire speakers to talk about? Because just because you're passionate about something, if you're like the world's foremost expert on underwater basket weaving, that's great. But like most people don't care, and most people, as far as I know, like there's no speaking opportunities around that. And so, but at the same time, like I don't claim to know, just like you guys, like I don't claim to know every possible industry, or like people get booked for some wild stuff that I was just like, I'll give an example. There's a lady we worked with who was a veterinarian, and she wanted to do a little bit of speaking on the side, and she got hired for her first gig. She was speaking at a conference in Vegas for $5,000. I was like, that's amazing. That's awesome. Tell me about it. And she said, it is a pet sitting conference, a pet sitting conference. And I tell you, boys, like the three of us, we know the speaking industry pretty well. So she came to me and she said, are there opportunities to get paid to speak for $5,000 in the pet sitting world? I'd be like, heck no, don't even think about that. So like, there's just crazy stuff that exists, but you have to, again, find that overlap between, and I don't know, there's probably not that many pet sitting conferences that are paying
sure.
$5,000. So some of this also aligns with the expectations of, are you wanting to do 100 gigs a year speaking to pet sitting events? Or you're like, man, if I could do like three, great, you probably found one of the three that exists. So there's definitely just that overlap between what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, and what actually exists in the marketplace. And what is it that groups and organizations, conferences, event planners actually hire speakers to talk about? So I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is just helping
Yeah,
speakers to narrow down, pick a starting point. Like we always remind speakers, you're not getting a tattoo, you're not making a permanent decision, you're picking a starting point. And so if you need to evolve, if you need to pivot over time, that's fine. Like most speakers don't say, this is what I'm speaking on, and I'm going to do that for the next 20 years. Like it just doesn't work like that. It evolves, it changes, their interest, their stage of life, the seasons, what's happening in the world or the economy or their industry. It's going to evolve and change, but you're not going to get anywhere if you don't at least pick some type of starting point.
Oh man, that's such an important thing. Like so many people will never even get off of the starting line because they're so focused on making that perfect decision up front. Whereas what you just described is 100% the truth. Like all you can do is take your best educated guess and then just do something. Because what happens when you just do something, anything, is you get feedback. You get
Yeah.
data, let's say, right? And then now that data helps you make a slightly better decision, and you can iterate and change and tweak things and mold it and craft it, because like you're just, nobody's going to have the answer out of the gates. It's counterintuitive. In fact,
Yeah.
entrepreneurship would be so much easier if that was ever the case. If I could just know what was going to work right out of the gates,
Yeah.
holy goddamn, I would not be doing this right now.
be a
We'd
lot
just
more
do something
boring too,
totally
though.
different.
So there's
It's
that.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I mean,
totally agree.
every
I
entrepreneur, every speaker, anybody like you look up to, you admire, you respect, like everybody's just doing their best and making it up as they go. Like I
Yeah, we were
literally
just
I
talking
shared
about
this in our
that,
our
right?
our, our team Slack this morning, of just like, hey, everybody here, everybody at this company, every student you interact with, every phone call you're on, every human is just doing their best. They're just figuring it out.
Mhm.
And some days you're like, hot dang, I think I'm onto something. Another day is
Yeah.
like, I don't know, man, it's falling apart. I don't know why, or it's working and I don't know why. And
Yeah,
like that's just like that's also part of it. Like that's part of the adventure. That's part of the journey of entrepreneurship. It's part of the journey of being a speaker. Is I think learning to like manage the mental game of it. Because it's
yeah,
hard. Because
it is.
you go through stretches and seasons where you're like, "Man, we are just killing it," and days where you're like, we are not, and I don't know why, and I'm not sure what to do to fix it. And like, so just understanding like how to manage like the mental roller coaster that you go through on a daily basis as an entrepreneur, as a speaker is it's a big challenge. And but Austin, to your point, like some of that just comes with time. It comes with reps. How do you become a better speaker? You speak. How do you become a better podcaster? You podcast. How do you become a better writer? You write. And so we could talk about speaking. We could talk about, you could read books, you could listen to the podcast, but at some point, like you gotta start trying to book some gigs
Just
and getting
doing it.
feedback and seeing what works and what doesn't. Iterate and pivot, and a lot of it just comes from getting going and figuring some stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Take
sure.
action. That's the name of the game. And
Good.
actually, like
Totally.
that leads to a question for you. Like, if you were to
Right.
give somebody a blueprint and say, look, out of the gates, okay, let's go back to your original like series of steps here, right? Like, so at this point, we've decided that we're willing to do the hard work and show up and do something. We've got at least a good starting point in terms of what it is that we're talking about, how that translates into solutions for somebody, and who the right person is to get that type of solution. So like, let's say we've got like the makings of a business, right? And somebody comes to you, Grant, and says, like, what do I do every day? Like, what should
Yeah.
my daily routine look like, roughly speaking? Like, I know there's no perfect solution here, but what would you say is like a typical daily routine for somebody that's in this initial period of just trying to get known?
Yep, yep. So I think there's a lot of things that people do that they think moves the needle. I'm going to update my website. I'm going to post on social media. I'm going to tweak my talk, and like the things that you're just like, it's like I'm dressing up to play business. But you're not actually. It's not actually moving the needle. It's not actually making any type of impact or difference there. And so, if your goal is to find and book speaking gigs, then you need to spend a high majority of your day trying to find speaking gigs and reaching out to people, starting conversations, following up with people, because like so much of the speaking business is not like sitting back and waiting for someone to magically find you. I'm just going to sit back, wait for the phone to ring, wait for someone to stumble across my website or demo video. Will that happen occasionally? Sure, that'll happen every so often, but for the most part, like I've done hundreds and hundreds of paid gigs myself, and 95% of them have probably come from like me finding them, reaching out to them, following up with them, staying on top of it, and being really systematic and strategic about that. Just doing what I said I'm going to do. So if I talk to you and you say, "Yeah, we're going to be reviewing speakers in 3 months," awesome. Do you care if I follow up with you in 3 months? Nah, have at it, go for it, because they don't think I'm going to actually do it. So then when I do, it's just giving that the precedent of like, no, this is what it's like to work with me, because they're an event planner is hiring you as a speaker to speak, but they also are hiring you to make their life easy and be really good to work with. Because a speaker, from an event planner standpoint, they've got hundreds of things they're trying to manage and think of and keep straight. And so a speaker is just one part of that. So the easier you can make the life of the event planner, the more likely they're going to want to work with you, to refer you, to have you back, to share you with other people. And so all that to say, a lot of people are like, man, the part I love the most is just being on stage and being a speaker. And like, yeah, that's great. But like, that's a small percentage of what it means to be a speaker. For example, I live here in Nashville. And so in Nashville, it's a big music industry. And so a neighbor of mine's an artist. And so I was talking with him recently, and we were kind of comparing notes. And he said, man, people think that like being a musician and like they perform in front of like big arenas, thousands of people, and he's like, people think it's cool, and the couple hours you're on stage is really cool, but there's very little to being an artist that is actually being on stage. And I think that's the case for speakers. Is just like the majority of speaking is not actually speaking. You spend a lot of time doing sales and marketing. Like if you want to be good as a speaker and build a business as a speaker, like get good at sales and marketing. And I always kind of felt like for me, when I was speaking 60, 70 gigs a year, like if I had good systems in place, if I was good at sales and marketing, I could just be okay as a speaker. Doesn't mean I was crappy or anything, but I don't know that anybody ever saw me as like, holy crap, that guy was the best speaker I've ever seen. But I knew I was good, just wasn't like world class, amazing, amazing, amazing. But I knew how to find and book gigs. I knew how to consistently reach out, follow up with people, have those systems in place. So that's where you need to spend your effort. That's where you need to spend your energy. Is have a CRM in place. And I knew for me, like my daily task, what we teach our speakers, the daily task is to check your CRM and who are the people in your pipeline, who are the people you need to reach out to, who are the people you talked to, 3 weeks ago or 5 months ago or last year that you're going to follow up with. Like that's what you need to do. Your daily task, your one task is to show up each day look at your CRM and do what it says to do, which is what you guys do. And so this is where like, if people are going like, okay, how do I get my CRM? Talk to these fellas. Like SpeakFlow's best in the game at this. So the CRM, I think, is the main thing you need to do to get that momentum going.
Oh, so thank you. First off,
You didn't pay
yep,
me to
just
say
preaching
that.
the good word. I didn't. We know we didn't. Yep. So, I already hear so many of the rebuttals that we get. I just want your take on this, like business owner to business owner, us talking about these concepts to people together. I'm sure you guys get them a lot too, but sometimes there's a sense of being on a pedestal when it comes to selling and marketing for people. What I mean by this is I'll always hear, "Oh, that's just not worth my time. My time is better spent producing content, being on social, creating videos. Like I'm just gonna have a VA do it all." What's your? I see your smirk over there. What's
I'm just
your?
like, yeah, good luck. Yeah, go for that.
Like,
Let's let's
is there
compare
a
let's
name?
compare notes in a year and see how that
Yeah,
goes for
see
you.
how it goes. Yeah.
Because
Have
yeah,
you ever?
I
It just doesn't
get that,
work
because it
out.
is the sales and marketing part is hard, right? Let's make no
Yeah.
mistake about it. Like we give people scripts, we tell you exactly what to say, we give you leads, we tell you who to follow up. Like we're gonna tell you exactly what to do, but it's still an element of like putting yourself out there, and what if they reject me, or what if they ask me something and I don't know, and what if they find out I'm a new speaker, and like all these like insecurities and doubts and fears that are completely normal, and like that is all reasonable and fine. So I don't want to diminish that, but posting something on social or tweaking your talk or recording some more videos, like that stuff just doesn't book gigs. It just doesn't. But again, you feel like it does, but because you're like, I'm doing something, I'm working on my business, right? But if the end result is to book speaking gigs, then you need to take the actions that are directly leading to you booking speaking gigs. And for 99% of speakers, doing stuff on social and recording some videos and like all that stuff's well and good, but like it's not going to book you speaking gigs. What books speaking gigs is you reaching out to people, following up with people, staying on top of that. And so if you say, I'm just going to pass it off to a VA, good luck with that. Let's compare notes in a year and see how that goes for you. Again, I'm not saying that to be like a jerk, but when
I
people
know
are
it's
just
true.
like, no, I promise this is going to work. Like it doesn't. Like I know. So I've tried it myself. I've seen students try it, and what you want to do is a cop out. It's like let's go back to what do you need to do to lose 10 pounds? And your doctor's like, listen, I've worked with thousands of patients. I've helped thousands of patients lose weight. Here's the things you need to do. And you're like, yeah, but I'm going to take
I
a
bet if I
pill.
eat turmeric every
Yeah,
day.
I'm going to just try this. And they're like, okay, fine. Like try, yeah, eat
Yeah.
your turmeric for a year, and then let's compare notes. And because you're just like, I know what works and I know what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is the lazy way out, and it doesn't work.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's hard too. So like I get it. And like there's like there's a version, I think, to feeling like you have to convince somebody of something. And I think that's why so many people struggle with sales, because they feel like they not only have to just send an email or something, but they have to convince or otherwise persuade the person on the other end that they're the right person. And that's kind of like an uncomfortable position to be in. And I think like probably all three of us would push back on that a bit. Sales shouldn't feel like you're having to manipulate or persuade if you really genuinely have something valuable that
Yeah.
the other person on your end really genuinely needs. So but nonetheless, there's certainly a perception that you have to be persuasive or manipulative or otherwise convincing to make sales work. Would you agree
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah, let me piggyback on that. So, I totally agree that people feel like, man, I'm not good at selling, and I don't know like these sales strategies or tactics. No, no, no. Like when you reach out to an event planner or decision maker, they if they're putting on an event, they're putting on a conference, you're not trying to convince them to hire a speaker. They're already planning on hiring a speaker. You're just showing them why you're a good fit. So whether they hire you or someone else, they're going to hire someone, right? And so it's kind of like I like to use this analogy. When I was in high school, I remember like one of the best days of the year was a snow day, because one, you obviously got out of school, but two, me and a buddy, we'd go over to the rich neighborhood and we would go door to door shoveling driveways. And like what we would do would be like we'd go up to the door and say, hey, you got a lot of snow in your driveway. And for $20, we can make that disappear. We're not trying to convince you you have a problem. There's a problem right there. And so it can melt, or you can pay someone else, or you can do it yourself, or we can take care of it for you, right? So for an event planner, you're not trying to convince them like, hey, have you ever thought about having a speaker? No, they're going to have a speaker. And so if you're saying like, hey, I'm a customer service speaker and I focus on speaking to dentists, and you reach out to an association that focuses on dentists, like, you're a pretty logical fit for what it is that they're doing. Their audience has the need that your talk, your solution provides. So I think, again, I totally agree, guys, that like it's easy to get it in your head of just like, I gotta do this like smoke and mirrors selling, skin. No, it's just like, you're hiring a speaker. Here's what I speak about. Here's how this would be a good fit for your audience. Does this make sense? Right. And like that's largely the extent of it here. And I think it's way simpler than people think it is.
Yep.
Heck
I'm
yeah.
hoping there's a lot of people that feel a lot less intimidated by the subject after
I hope
hearing
so.
that.
Yeah. Simple. Simple. It's hard work, but still simple. So
Indeed.
I want your quick take, Grant. So you've been in the business for a while, right? You've been speaking for a while. 08-ish is when you start. Is that right? When you started Breakthrough?
Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, like 07, 08. Yeah, somewhere in
7,
there.
8. Okay, great. Okay. So we're going on what, like 12, 15. Wow, it's 2020 in my head right now. So 15 years of seeing the industry evolve.
Yeah.
It's been particularly quick over the last 3 for
Yep. Yep.
reasons, well, I won't mention, that everyone knows about. But I'm curious, like, fundamentally, has the industry changed? And like, are you seeing, like, visionary moment here for a minute? Like, what new challenges might arise going forward, as far as, running a speaking business? Are you seeing any changes? Have you seen any changes? Is it
Like
fundamentally
yes
the
and no.
same?
Like I mean, one of the great things about the speaking industry is it's been around longer than the three of us have been alive. It's
Yeah.
survived wars and recessions and depressions and 9/11 and pandemics. Like it's not going anywhere. It will be here long before us. It'll be here long after us, right? So people are always going to be gathering in groups and listening to someone share some type of message, and there's also always going to be a need for speakers to be able to do that, fulfill that, and learn how to do that. And so, in some ways, like the business is largely the same as what it was a couple of decades ago, and it'll probably largely be the same as what a couple decades from now. The things I think that are different now and that are kind of unique is I think that the pandemic was, well, especially those first few months there were just completely jarring for the speaking industry. I think fast forward to now, and like the pandemic has been one of the best possible things to happen to the speaking industry, in large part because you guys know, like, prior to the pandemic, like virtual speaking, especially, like just wasn't a thing. Like nobody was really doing virtual gigs. Event planners weren't really taking it seriously. The pandemic hits, virtual becomes the only game in town, and everybody jumps on that. And what we've seen happen is, like, fast forward a couple years, and it's not like live events have come back in replacement of virtual events, but they've come back in addition to virtual events. And so now, if anything, like people see opportunities that didn't exist before. So some event that was going like, hey, we've done several 100-person conferences before, but we're thinking about doing like the small, 20-person workshop. Does this make sense? Like they can do it virtually now, whereas before maybe they just didn't think of it. They didn't know that that was an option. And speakers are much more accustomed to presenting that. We're seeing a lot more like hybrid opportunities where maybe a speaker will show up and they will present something in person at a conference, and then for the next 6 months they're doing a monthly, Zoom follow-up to help with the implementation. So if anything, it kind of allows speakers some more versatility and options to go deeper with a client, to increase the revenue. It's kind of like, if you go to I live here in Nashville where Chick-fil-A is big, right? And so you go to Chick-fil-A, you go to some burger place, and like you can get just the sandwich, you can get just the burger, or would you like fries with that? Would you like a drink with that? Would you like to supersize that? And I think that's kind of the case right now for speakers of, before the model has kind of been show up, you speak, you leave, into transaction, right? But now it's like, hey, here's some ways we can go deeper, help you implement this and apply this. Here's maybe a training program. Here's a curriculum. Here's some additional coaching we can do. Here's something we can do virtually. So now you have like one client that you work with that you can go deeper with, that you can increase the revenue, you can increase the impact. And so if anything, I think like there's amazing opportunities right now for speakers that largely didn't exist before.